Okay. So here, if you follow along in the security module on our portal, okay, we have some information for you that you should find useful. For instance, down below, you'll find that you'll need to install a package to handle Passport Google integration. Okay? We already installed Passport on Monday, right? Don't forget to use the -- save. So let's install the Google Passport module from the command line, and then verify that your Passport package JSON has indeed installed Passport Google OAuth. Okay? Right. Once that is done, right, we can now add the button that is going to allow us to log in to Google. Right. So let's now go to the login page, and in our login page, right, we can add an additional button at the bottom. Oops, that's not it. Copy. That allows us to log in. All right. Now notice where is this pointing to? This is pointing. Notice that's a relative path, right? / auth Google. See that? That means that this is going to our server, right? Whether it's the local host, right, or Heroku, right? It's our machine, right? It's going out to our machine, and we need to and it's a GET request. See that? Right? All links are just plain all GET requests. Okay? So we need to create an endpoint on the client on the server side to listen in for that incoming GET request. So let's see what that looks like. So let's go to the login. So let's do log out. So now we have the Google button to log in. Notice that it's not showing Google's G, and that's because apparently I'm not using Font Awesome. So let's install that real quick. Font, I don't. Okay. I believe I give you a link to it. Is that it? I guess so. Let's copy that. Let's add it here. And let's reload. There it is. There's Google+. Okay? Very good. And all the major vendors are represented there, right? So Apple, LinkedIn, Amazon, everybody's there. Okay, and these are open source, right? So no problem with using these logos legally. All right. So right now, if I click on Google, notice that it's coming to our server, right? And there's nothing there listening at that request, right? So we need to start working on that on the server side, right? All right. So to do that, we give you some start code here, right? We'll need to load the Google strategy. There it is. This is the endpoint that listens for that incoming request from our button, right? So let's grab that. So on our user service server, right? Let's create that endpoint. Okay. Saying that, hey, Passport, this reads. There's an incoming request from the client from the login page to authenticate using the Google the Google strategy, right? And that Passport should use the Google strategy to ask Google, right, for basic profile information, including the email. But I can list other things here, right? Contact list, button, pictures, all sorts of information that I would ask for. But notice that we don't have the Google strategy configured, right? So we need to load that strategy. So let's load it. There it is. I'm going to load it. I'm going to put it right underneath our local strategy, right there. There it is. So we loaded the OAuth strategy, Google's OAuth strategy, and now we have to configure it. Right? We need to configure it. We're going to say, we're going to tell it, hey Google, I already registered my application with Google, right? And they gave me my client ID. They gave me a secret, and I register a callback, meaning that's where Google's going to call me back saying, "Yep, this is where it's going to be listening at locally on my machine." And that one I can show you what its value is. I can say echo callback. Okay, if you look at that, notice that it says HTTP. This is my local machine 3000 auth Google callback, meaning that locally on my server I better be listening to that endpoint. It's just a plain old get, right? It's a plain old get request, right? That is mapped to this route. Okay, I need to listen to it because that's where Google is going to come back to me, right, and pass me the profile information, right, and let me know if it's successful or not. Okay. So yeah, there it is. There's my endpoint. There's my endpoint right there. And so I'm going to put that right next to my endpoint, right next to my get here. So this is where Google is going to come back to me. See that? It matches the callback URL that I registered with Google. And you can register whatever you want, whatever makes sense for you. Okay? I call them auth Google callback. You can have then another one, auth Facebook callback, right? Auth LinkedIn callback, right? Each one for whatever different strategy you're using to be able to log in. And what this says is that this is the one that's outgoing, right? So it's coming from our browser, right? It's coming to our server, and now Passport is redirecting it to Google. Yes? And then Google is going to come back with a result, and it's still going to be handled by Passport. Yes? I'm not going to be handling this. Again, but in both cases, they're being both handled by the there it is. I guess this might be a little bit easier to read. Okay, so this is the one that redirects to Google for logging in, and this is the one that comes back from Google with a response. Okay, and this is being configured in both cases with the Google strategy. This incoming, what this is going to do, what this is saying is that not only am I going to handle this, I'm going to pass it to you to do whatever you want with the information, right? The profile that it comes back, I'm going to pass it on to you. You're going to look at it, and you're going to say whether you're going to allow this or not, right? If it's okay with you, okay? So you can handle whether something went wrong or not. And depending on what you say, what we say, right? If we say it's good, it's going to send us to the profile. Or if we say it's no good, then it's going to send us back to in the login, right? And here's where we choose where to go in our application, how we want to handle, by what do we want to display the user if it's successful or not, right? If it's successful, we want to redirect them to our profile. If it's not successful, we're going to redirect them back to our login page where it started from, right? Maybe with an error message or something. Okay, make sense? So that's the last piece. We need to configure the function that is going to handle the response that comes from Google. Right? We need to configure that. Right? So to do that, we have a function that that allows us to configure that. Right? We can say, I have the Google strategy. Okay. This is the functions that's going to handle it. This is the configuration, meaning the client ID, the secret, right? The callback URL. We need to give that. We haven't done that yet. There it is. I'm going to copy that. Okay. This is my Google configuration. I'm reading all this from the from the environment variable. All right. We don't want to include any of this information in source control. Right. These things should live in environment variables. And I'm configuring here. There it is, configuration. It's that one right there, configuration. And that's how I'm configuring the Google strategy. And I'm telling it where to call me back. Right? In this callback, when it comes back from the server, from Google, right? It's going to first notify me at this function. It's going to notify me, hey, this is what Google said. What do you want to do? Right? So I have the beginnings of a function here for you. I'm going to grab it. Okay, I'm just going to copy it. I'm just going to paste it way down here. Okay, this is the function where Google is going to provide us with the profile information. It says, hey, there it is. This is what Google gave us, plus a couple of other things, right? Including a token. Right? That token is kind of like a cookie that can be stored in a database, right, for later use. Right? So, for subsequent queries, we could use that token, right, to let them know that, hey, we already authenticated. Right? We already have a token. It can also be used across applications. It can be shared amongst applications. So that if I already authenticated once in one application, I could use the same exact token to use in another application. Right? So it's kind of like a cookie that goes across applications, right? And it could go across domains. Right? We're not going to use the token, but nevertheless, I'm going to store it in the database, right? It's convenient. So what we're going to do here is that when the request comes back, when the response comes back from Google, right? It's going to be handled by Passport, and it's going to notify us in that function. It's going to notify us, hey, this is what came back from Google. What do you want to do? From that function, we're going to either decide to go forward, and yes, we want to store this person in our database. It's a good whatever we're going to accept this user or not. And depending on what we decide, if it's successful, it's going to direct to the profile page, or otherwise it's going to direct us to the failure in the login page. And that we can configure too. Right? We'll configure. So anyway, so here's how we decide to go one way or another. So in the Google strategy, there's our profile, right? It's going to include the user ID, right? That's it right there, profile.id. That's Google's unique identifier for their accounts. Okay. What we're going to do is that we're going to go in our database and see if that user already exists in our database. If we already stored this user in a database, right? If the user exists, then we're going to notify Passport that this user is good. We want to make them the currently logged in user, meaning create a brand new session, brand new cookie, our cookie, not Google's cookie. Create a brand new cookie so that as long as that cookie is valid, don't authenticate them again, right? It is the current session, right? And as long all throughout the application is going to be always available through the request.user, right? So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to say if it's good, we're going to notify Passport colon done saying, yep, that is the current user that is logged in. Make sense? That if it's already in the database. If it's not in the database, we're going to add them to our database. Remember, this user exists in Google's database. It doesn't exist in our database, right? So it might be the very first time. Very first time. And what we're going to do is that we're going to parse a couple of things from the profile, right, including a couple of things, the first name, last name, right? Now, the schema for the profile object varies from one vendor to the next, right? So Google, for instance, puts the first name and last name under dot name, dot given name, or last name here. Facebook is a little bit different. Twitter is a little bit different. Each one is a little bit different, right? So either read the documentation or look at the profile object that comes from those services, right? And then decide what do you want to do with it, okay? What I decided to do is I'm taking the email and I'm going to create a username out of the email, right? Maybe it's not a good idea. Perhaps I should have chosen for the username. It's just the whole email, maybe, right? That would have been a better choice, perhaps. I'm going to grab from profile emails array. It's an array of emails. In Google, you can have more than one email. I'm going to grab the first one, and I'll grab that as the email. And then I'm going to use the email. I'm going to split it into several pieces, and I'm going to take the first half, and I'm going to use that as a username. Right, so if I have janunzi@gmail, then my username will be just janunzi. Right? Again, that might not be a good idea because somebody might be already registered as janunzi, right? Before, right? And I'm not doing any validation. Typically, you would do some validation, or perhaps use some other mechanism to ensure uniqueness. Right? That's up to you. Then I grab first name, last name. I take the email, and then notice what I'm storing here, something that is specific to Google. Right? So we're gonna have to extend our schema to be able to support, right, this new piece of information that is Google specific. Right? In particular, we're going to store the unique identifier for Google and the token that Google gave us. We're going to store that as well, although we're not going to use it, right? But it's a good idea to store it. And then we're going to actually create the user. When we create the user, right, that's going to be the currently logged in user. Right? And then finally, when it's created, we're going to say done, and that user that we just created is going to be the currently logged in user. Make sense? Everybody okay? All right. So the next thing would be to extend the schema and extend the model, right? To implement this find user by Google ID, and we'll do that next.